Hello, hello. Can hear you loud and clear. Thank you, everyone, for joining the space, and would be keen to get started as soon as possible. So, with that being said, let's start with a quick round of introductions. Mike, could you please go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody, how you doing? I am the founder of Bridge Mutual.
Thank you for the concise introduction, and on to Shailef from Olive. Please go ahead.
Hope I'm audible. And about myself, I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Olive Finance. Olive is all about providing decentralized platform for users to generate amplified yield in a principally protected manner. We'll talk more about it in the space.
Amazing. Thank you, Shailesh. Gleb from Balancer, please go ahead.
What's up, everyone? It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I'm a contributor balancer. I'm mostly focused on content, community initiatives. Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Turn from Bat, please provide a quick introduction as well.
Hello, I'm Pattern. I'm Chief Meme Lord and Head of our Ambassador Program. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Nice. Thank you for joining the space on a quite a late minute notice. Mugglesec from Gearbox, please go ahead.
Hey, hi, I'm Muggles from Gearbox. I'm a marketing contributor. Gearbox enables you to earn leverage yields across DeFi through spot leverage.
Awesome. Thank you for the quick introduction, everyone. And on to last but not least, Stefan from Orion Protocol, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Stefan, focused on growth and operations at Orion. So Orion really provides a decentralized access to the best sources of liquidity, so the best exchanges in the world, like Binance, KuCoin, but in a fully decentralized manner. So being able to trade from your wallet to all these large centralized exchanges with no account and global access.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for such a smooth and quick round of introductions. I think that took 2 minutes, which I think must be a record for Twitter Space. So before we get into this Twitter Space, really appreciate everyone in the audience and all the speakers coming in. But before we get started, I would like you to all throw some emojis up, like and retweet the space so that we're able to reach as many people as possible. And for those listening back in the recap, which tends to happen in these spaces, I think our last space had over 1,000 listeners go through the recap. So anyone listening from at a later date, I hope you're having a wonderful day and enjoy listening to the discussion that we're about to have. So with that being said, I'd like to go through a little bit about today's Twitter space. So the topic is growth within DeFi, and some important notes for the speakers in the panel. Please, let's try to keep the space as free-flowing as possible. So avoid raising your hand and just chime in whenever you think is a good part. Please try avoid chilling, but you're absolutely free to talk about your own project in whatever way that you fit. With that being said, I will help to keep the conversation flowing if it's needed. But let's get on to the AMAs. So let's start. What are the key factors contributing to the rapid growth of DeFi, and how has the landscape evolved over the past year, and what trends do you foresee shaping its future growth? So let's start by whoever wants to take this question, please raise your hand, and afterwards we'll have the conversation flowing quite freely. Gleb, please go ahead.
Sure, thanks a lot. I feel like this is a very, very good question, and you can look at it from different perspectives. But what really stands out to me is that DeFi is super accessible. So if you, for example, want to do something in the traditional finance system, it's like you want to do something and you face a lot of roadblocks. You just cannot go to a bank and open a new account. You need to go through some specific processes. It might take some time. It's pretty difficult and sometimes very tiresome for people, which is pretty understandable. And DeFi doesn't have that. If you want to start using DeFi protocols, you also just need a wallet, and that's it. And you can create it easily as well. It's all permissionless, and I kind of feel like that's what drives DeFi's growth. Both because people just like how it all looks and feels, and also because some people might be unbanked, or they might not be fully okay with the traditional financial system, so they might need something else for whatever reason, just because they cannot use banks for they want to maybe banks are too expensive for them to use or stuff like that. And then DeFi really solves it by just being available and being there. And I really feel like that's the largest, the biggest thing here. It's how easy it is to use, and everyone just kind of sees it. And once you get onboarded, well, you can just do whatever you want to, and you don't really have to face a lot of difficulties, as long as you know how it all works, of course.
Yep, completely agree with Gleb. And just adding on to that, for users, definitely that permissionless is a great part. But the best part about DeFi, what I really like is it even extends to protocols. So that's where composability comes in, right? Say a protocol like Curve. You aren't just limited to Curve being Curve, but you can go ahead and build different things over Curve. That's where Convex comes in. That's where even Gearbox provides leverage on Curve. And this composability is a pretty good factor in terms of how the growth is happening because whatever the key protocols that we've seen develop over the previous cycles, they get growth out of new protocols developing over them. And then, of course, I think one of the key factors over the last year that we've seen is the rise of L2s. The Arbitrum ecosystem has been massive for DeFi. There was a lot of speculation that after the token actually drops, we would see DeFi kind of drop down on Arbitrum, but we have only seen that growth, which is key because as we want to bring in more users, we need to do that on a platform which is faster. We need to do that on a platform which is cheaper for them to use so that we can actually attract these users. And Arbitrum seems to be standing the test of time. As liquidity grows on that, we can see more and more DeFi protocols actually migrating from ETH mainnet to L2s, which is kind of what the thought process was for Ethereum. So that will be an amazing addition.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what Gleb said earlier, like when we're looking at the rapid growth of DeFi, it really is, in my opinion, it's because really it's a borderless system. Like for the first time, when the internet started, anyone could have access to information anywhere in the world, wherever they are, whatever their situation is. If you have access to internet, you have access to data. Now, for the first time, that's happening with the finance system, really. So anyone in the world can now lend money, like own assets, trade with pretty much like no restrictions compared to the traditional finance market. And so when you're looking at building teams and building companies, projects, and just starting, like Leb said, like it's very easy and there's so little friction. We in the space see how we see the friction and the pain points for mainstream adoption to happen. But when you look at it from the big picture, it's like anyone in the world could trade with anyone all of a sudden, like with no pretty much no limitations. Like when you go back to you look at corporations and how they operate, it's so different than DeFi. And so I think what led really to the big growth of DeFi, and you look at the numbers, it's really that anyone around the world can contribute. You're not looking at the GDP of one country or the growth of one company in one jurisdiction. You're really looking at the growth of a global financial system where anyone, anywhere can make it grow. So I think that has a big impact. And for maybe trends in the future, I think we're going to see more and more companies looking into payments and stable coins maybe, or transacting with each other with USDC. And when they see how easy, quick, and efficient it is, I think we're going to see more and more. Obviously, it takes a lot of time to get there. There's a lot of legal issues and pain points really to onboard corporations. But I think once some of them see that it is a more efficient way and an open and way of transacting, then that's going to gain traction.
Certainly, some very good points made by yourself, Stefan. Shailesh, anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is primarily in DeFi 1.0, a lot of primitive protocols were being built like Aave and Uniswap, but now we are seeing advent of protocols like Pendle or Flashtake, which are like kind of basically providing advanced advanced products on DeFi, such as because of these protocols, it's now possible to do something like zero coupon bonds and swaps, right, which were earlier not possible. So I think overall, as I see a lot of real world trade and transactions as well as assets moving on to DeFi or blockchain, this is going to be the catalyst for future growth. uh, because without this, a lot of sophisticated investors or institutional investors will still not adopt it because they really want access to these kind of products to meet their, I would say, risk return appetite.
Yep. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the one thing I was thinking about in my research for today was how DeFi sounds like defy. And this is like the whole point of it is to sort of resist the current financial system and build something that's accessible to everyone and worldwide. And I think the main thing that's helping growth at the moment is definitely the layer twos and like Solar, and as well as like Solana and other platforms, because the gas fees were simply absolutely insane during the original DeFi summer. Like, yeah, like to close down an Aave loan, like during the flash crash, actually costs like an F.
Yep, absolutely. I do think layer twos have been supporting with growing the access of DeFi to multiple people, particularly those with smaller ticket sizes in their investments. But Mike, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah. I'm curious to know what you guys think of the layer two situation in general. Who do you think is coming out on top? I personally don't think there's a lot of room for multiple layer twos to all have ample liquidity. Most of them are boasting in different ways, just like basically cheaper gas fees and higher throughput. But we see chains come and go. Like I would argue, we've seen Solana kind of come and go, and I think anybody else would have a difficult time challenging that opinion. I mean, they're pretty down on the gutters from where they were in terms of activity. And I think we've seen that. I mean, just going back, like Polkadot kind of, Cardano kind of, and I know those aren't layer twos, but I guess what I mean is ETH alternatives, right? And then at layer twos, we have a lot of competition as well coming up between ZK Sync and Arbitrum, Optimism, and more. And I, as a founder, and as you guys are maybe either founders or on the boards of your respective projects deciding where to go, you would know that it takes a lot of resources to kind of pivot to being on another chain to make yourself more accessible. It's not like a free thing to do, right? It takes overhead, development costs, time, planning, front end work, and to the extent you're offering awards, you gotta have bridges for your tokens and offer yield on those chains sometimes to get people to use them and incentivize them. And it can be a lot of work for nothing if the chain comes and goes, like a flash in the pan. So really curious to hear your thoughts, guys, on that.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think the thing with L2s is it's more about the entire stack, to be very honest, right? I mean, uh, L2s don't just start with L2s, they start with bridges. So to begin with, we need bridges that are more secure so that we can actually transfer the funds from the mainnet to another L2 without worrying about the security bit. And then on the L2 itself, we need the infrastructure that is required to kind of make a protocol function like we do on the ETH mainnet. So price feeds, oracles, Chainlink, things like those are vital for an L2 to actually function, for protocols to actually grow on an L2, because without that, it becomes harder for a protocol to measure when to liquidate, when not to liquidate, how to manage positions. At the end of the day, it's finance, and that's needed. Once we are already there, we then need the existing protocols who have created the structure on the ETH mainnet to also have their presence over there. So something like, I'm sorry, somebody just mentioned blue chip protocols like Uniswap, Curve, Yon, Convex, Lido. We need all these different protocols on L2s. So the L2s that have these kind of have an advantage in terms of attracting the newer DeFi protocols, because then they have something to build upon. If we have swaps, if we have staking available, then that is where LSGFi and different things can come in. And then finally liquidity, because if there's not enough liquidity, you simply can't just go ahead and build more upon that L2, right? If you cannot depend on being able to return the user funds that come to you, you risk bad to your protocol. And that's where the risk framework goes kind of out of hand. And I think these are the four things that I value quite a lot when I'm personally looking at an L2. Also, obviously, the kind of security mechanism they go for to begin with. So that's my larger view on, I think how I see L2s progressing. But the good part is that we are seeing them progress in this manner. The overall TVL that we have seen decline on ETH isn't uh, something that has been mapped onto the L2. So while Ethereum has gone down 75% in terms of TVL from the bull market, if we look at Arbitrum, it's just growing. Even at the token launch, it's gone from I think 1.9 billion to 2.7 billion. So there's good signs of L2s catching up.
It's a very good question. Maybe just to add to your last point about liquidity, because that's where Orion comes in and tries to find solutions. Originally, we were talking about L1s and which L1s would succeed, and then the liquidity being segregated between different exchanges, between different centralized and decentralized exchanges, but also between different chains. So I think, yes, so projects that are building L2s is very, you really need to create something different and much better for the user. By the end of the day, I think there'll be different L2s that people use depending on their preferences or the protocols that they use. But what the solutions that we focus on really in terms of liquidity is, there are, again, the largest sources of liquidity really are Binance, KuCoin, OKX, like all these centralized exchanges. Our goal really is to make this liquidity available on different networks, and whether L1s or L2s. For example, we're able to bring KuCoin's liquidity onto BNB chain, even though KuCoin doesn't really support BNB withdrawals via BNB chain. And so this is the long-term goal that we have, is really to make sure that the liquidity that exists across different exchanges, across L2s, across L1s, is shared across all these networks, so that it becomes so that DeFi overall becomes a much more efficient financial system. So there are a lot of technical challenges around that, but to tackle the liquidity problem, that's what we're doing, right? Bring liquidity onto different chains to help them. The big problem really is to create assets on all these new chains. That they need to create new bridges. That still becomes an issue, but in terms of day-to-day liquidity or transient liquidity, like we call it sometimes, making centralized liquidity, which is really by far the biggest source of liquidity, making it accessible in decentralized networks, I think it will really help projects tackle that problem.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I really feel like L2s are awesome for like the end user, but they might be tricky for protocols, because if you as a protocol want to expand like a lot of considerations. And I just really feel like L2s are really the future of scaling, and just because of how fast they are, how easy they are to use, how really cheap and accessible they are. But then also, it's really cool to see a lot of protocols expand into them, even though it might be challenging. Expanding to one L2 might be different from expanding to another one. And it's just that I want to say that like a lot of considerations go into it, but at the end of the day, it's like really worth it, because you can just reward a lot more people, and you can make your protocol and the whole ecosystem more accessible by that.
For sure, for sure. Excellent points made by everyone on the panelist. Mike, does that give you, I guess, answer the question which you raised, or is there anything that you'd like to add related to the points made so far?
Well, I still kind of have I understand layer twos are great and they're growing and they're nice, but there's more in the pipeline, and I'm worried about it being a fad, the same way that I was trying to reference earlier Solana being just a fad, just like a temporary thing that was hot. And before that, Polkadot was like a temporary thing that was hot. And I'm trying to look long term out into the future, like 5 years, what's still going to be here, what's still going to be used. We know it's Ethereum for sure. But what is the cheaper gas alternative Ethereum compatible chain that is going to be here to stay long term? That's going to focus on bringing like consumers into DeFi in a simple way. That's really what I'm getting at. Is it Arbitrum? I'm not, I'm really not sure. So like it's hard as when you're piloting the ship, it's difficult to determine like what's the right way to go. Because if we would have like we were for example bridging the protocol over to Solana for a long time, put a lot of time into that. It's a different code base, and ultimately we stopped before we spent too much time on it because we concluded that it was just going to be a temporary popular thing and not here for the long term. So that's more my concern and more what I'm trying to get from you guys' opinions.
Mike, I have a question to you. So when you say that you figure out it's going to be a temporary fed, what are the signals which make you feel that?
No, I'm not. That's not my conviction. It's my concern, and I think it's a potential concern. I don't have any feelings one way or the other. What would make me feel that is just past performance of other chains and.
No, let's talk about Solana. Like you mentioned, you were developing for the Solana, and then sometime in the journey you kind of stop. So what are the signals you're looking for? Because then there will be equivalent parallels to. We can only learn from the past and then apply that to the future for some kind of pattern matching to understand.
I mean, for Solana, like for Polkadot, which is what we were originally going to launch on, it was just they had missed a bunch of deadlines to make it a viable chain, and we had to pivot. For Solana, it was like the second or third time that the entire chain broke down, and that just didn't look good compared to like Ethereum being so battle tested. It didn't make sense to be there long term. So we stopped development on that. For Arbitrum, I mean, nothing yet. I still haven't even looked into the thing that happened at the start of Arbitrum, where there's some kind of dispute about the DAO and like things were done before the DAO voted or something like that. I gotta debrief myself still. I know that was a while ago, but I want to look into it, but I'm taking my time with that one as well. Yeah, if you have any insights or thoughts, I'm just really curious how you guys are making those decisions.
Like the way I see it is the one thing that made Solana stand out is the fact that it wasn't an EVM machine. So people were forced to build stuff from scratch. And with all the other protocols as regards to layer twos, yes, Ethereum is king. So it all depends on the accessibility of the bridges to Ethereum. And, you can just copy paste it, can't you, most of the time, if it's all EVM. But I think it's all the current situation is just temporary until like there'll be like Chainlink or someone will do like a cross-chain protocol, and it won't matter where the liquidity is, because the different things that the chain has going for it will be what matters.
Yeah, that would be nice and ideal, and people have been kind of talking about solutions like that for almost half of a decade now, or maybe a little bit longer. Still waiting for one that really does the job,
Yep, for sure. That leads me on to the next question and next point which I wanted to make. So firstly, I'd like to introduce a new speaker, Ayush from Uniland. Would you like to give a quick, brief introduction about yourself and what you guys are building?
Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's great to be here. I was listening to all the arguments around L2 and it's pretty interesting. So let me briefly introduce about myself. I am Ayush and I handle marketing and operations at Uniland Finance. And uh, earlier I was working with startups in India. I worked at Uber also building supply in different cities. So it's been like more than 5 years now since I'm into the blockchain space, and it is like it still feels like it's completely new and fresh, and every day there are new things happening and new innovation is happening. And at Uniland Finance, we are also doing some major things into the DeFi space. Unilend is a lending and borrowing protocol. To the people who do not know, so it is completely permissionless, similar to Uniswap, but you can lend and borrow any of your ERC20 tokens on Unilend Finance. Once we launch our V2, it will be completely permissionless and you will be able to lend and borrow all the tokens. At the present, we have our V1 live on mainnet on 4 different chains, I think. And we had pretty good volume of flash loans on V1. More than $50 million worth of flash loans were executed. And apart from that, right now, as I was listening, like we recently launched our V2 or testnet on Polygon ZK EVM. So we are also exploring how we can expand on L2s and how we can utilize rollups, which is like a new thing into the market. And you can see the lot of TVL jump and other things are happening. And we are also gearing up for our mainnet launch coming soon in few weeks. So yeah, that's all about us.
Great, great. Thank you, Ayush, for the brief introduction. So that leads me on to my next question. Very similar to what the topic which we were just on in terms of on layer two, but in terms of how do you view the scalability challenges of DeFi's and what solutions or innovations do you see emerging to address these issues? I know, I believe it was someone mentioned that a chain link would definitely be a good approach. Is there any other perspectives from the panel today of what they think would be a good approach in terms of how we can scale DeFi and onboard more people, particularly for first time DeFi users? Gleb, please go ahead.
Thanks. I think this is like a very like a very good question. The topic itself is pretty like multifaceted. Also, I'd say the technological side, I'm not really worried about it. I really kind of feel like if there are any like technological challenges that we as a space will be able to overcome them sooner or later. What I feel like is the biggest challenge is the fact that DeFi might be just too difficult for people who really know little to nothing about crypto. So, I mean, if we've been talking for like, half an hour now, and we've mentioned quite a few, DeFi-centric terms. And if someone just listens in and if they know, very, very little about crypto, maybe they just heard the word Bitcoin, whatever, Ethereum, and they just join a space and then they hear us talking about L2 scalability, wallets and stuff like that, it might be confusing and overwhelming. And it's not like anyone's fault. It's just, the space is not very easy. It's like a very new industry, and we are doing all these awesome like tech stuff. But I really kind of feel like if DeFi solves this, challenge of like just becoming easier for new entrants, for newcomers, that would be huge. So like, when you walk into a bank, you know what to expect. So it would be cool to, there are very few things in TradFi that could be good for DeFi, but I really kind of feel like this initial simplicity would be awesome. So when you go to like any protocol's landing page as someone who's very new to the space and you see something, I mean, ideally it should resonate with you and it should be easy to understand. So I really feel like we are making a lot of steps in that direction, but I really also feel like there is still some work to be done there.
For sure. I think some excellent points made by Gleb. I think in terms of the onboarding journey for the user, we have to focus less on the tech side and just focus on accessibility and a very simple UX and UI for users. And even when it comes to our communications, whether it be on Twitter Spaces or in other media formats as well, to just prioritize simplicity so that we're able to onboard more users as they see some of the bits. But Stefan, please add to the conversation.
I mean, I'm struggling to say this or not, but what you just discussed is exactly what I've been working on recently. Nothing is announced yet, but we've been working on a project with teams that are, that have built the technology around Orion and others. We've been ideating and working on a project that should be announced relatively soon about tackling that exact problem, how to onboard everyone. how to onboard our moms or dads, or how to onboard our friends. When someone knows about Bitcoin, how do they buy Bitcoin? There needs to be an extremely easy onboarding solution. So I'm not going to say more. Honestly, this might be the first time I hint at it in public. So if you want, we need a very easy solution, and so far there are good steps in that way. There are some fintech apps, traditional fintech apps that now have crypto, and then that's how you can onboard users that are already investors. I'm in Canada, so we have Wealthsimple, and now they have Wealthsimple Crypto. But it's still, you need a very friendly approach to get everyone on board. I agree.
Definitely.
Especially if we want to service the unbanked people, like people that don't have the bank, or that if crypto is a solution for their problems in life, in their financial life, then those problems need to be very easily accessible.
For sure. That definitely links quite well to my next question as well. And that is, in what ways has DeFi contributed to financial inclusion, and how can we further expand access to DeFi products and services, especially for underbanked populations? So I know you just touched on that, and if you'd like to add on that, please. But if any other panel would like to see how we can provide just normal people in general, particularly those unbanked, so that we're able to bridge the gap of financial inclusion globally, please go ahead.
I guess I'll start. I think about it all the time, and I'm curious to know what Stefan is referencing. Looking forward to that announcement. Regarding inclusion, I guess it starts with like basic crypto inclusion, which I guess we're starting to see more and more number of account holders going up for basic assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum. But the jump between getting them to invest in assets which they can understand the risks of, price go up, price go down, that's not so hard. But then getting them to understand the risks involved in any of the DeFi protocols right now, I think that's much more challenging. I don't know how at this stage we can reliably onboard like lay people into DeFi when there's so much other risk involved. A lot of DeFi protocols revolve around providing liquidity, or their assets being lent out on complex smart contracts with exploits. Obviously, that's something that we focus on all the time here at Bridge Mutual, being an insurance protocol. So I guess that's why it's in the forefront of my mind. I would love for people to be involved through simple things like, Ledger or MetaMask on the phone or a Coinbase wallet. But getting them to do DeFi, it's just so difficult. The current state of DeFi is just like upgradable contracts run by founders with a lot of centralized control, updating things in kind of like real time, almost sometimes pushing updates without really even announcing it, making material changes, having like the ability to potentially, change the token contract or remove the money from the pools and stuff like that. And, most of them won't, because most of them are doxed, but it's like, that's not a really great fail safe. So Gleb, please take over.
Yeah, I just want to say that I really like the points that you made, and I really feel like DeFi accessibility is like yet something to be improved for most to kind of get on board it, just because, as you said, like many wallets, most wallets, they don't really focus on making it easy for people to get on board. They focus on something else. I mean, there are wallets that do like a great job with it, like Zerion, for example, that you can kind of like slide into DeFi in a very, very smooth way, and then start checking the protocols. And on the protocol level, it's like understanding how it all works is one thing. So when you get the basics, it's fine. Like you feel like you have a good idea of how it all works, and then you try to, I don't know, swap some tokens and whatnot. And then, for instance, you try to swap something for Ethereum, and then there isn't all that much liquidity, and then you get slippage, or for some reason you get sandwiched, and then you kind of lose money on that swap, and then you don't really know why, and then that's very confusing. So I kind of feel like we could, on the one hand, like educate people on that, but then we could also try to eliminate those issues on the protocol level as well. So if you look at Balance, for example, like there are lots of different pool types, and they try to, as I see it, at least, like all these pool types, they make sure that when like regular people interact with them, they don't really get sandwiched. They don't, get some weird quotes, and they don't really have to face all these issues. So, like, we could definitely like do more to educate people. But I also really feel like it's really awesome to see the industry working towards making sure that when people interact with like different, dApps and smart contracts, they don't really get something unexpected that they may have never heard of before. So, if we minimize that, I think it's going to be awesome.
Hello.
Yep. So just going to
Yeah.
add something
So
over
I
here. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, I think you guys are talking on top of each other. Ayush, please go ahead, and we'll go over to you in a sec.
Yeah. So what I believe is we have seen the boom of DeFi earlier, and I feel that still we have not even covered the tip of the iceberg. Like we have a huge scope in DeFi right now. You can see that there are. I don't think there are still 1% or maybe 2% people who are holding their tokens in wallets are actually participating in DeFi. There can be different barriers like gas fees or security reasons or lack of knowledge or even sometimes lack of incentives also. So I think that is where we should first bring penetration rather than bringing people who are into traditional finance and all of that, because uh, like I believe that it has to be phase wise transition. Like people who are holding their assets in banks or other places, those people are not the right target for DeFi, because as some of the panelists suggest that there are a lot of different kind of risk involved in cryptos and this whole ecosystem. Like a lot of people won't even understand how exactly this all plays out, and they'll end up losing more money, and they'll think that okay, this is more of a scam or more of a so they will not be comfortable moving much of their assets. Rather than we should focus on participation from people who are already holding their tokens on MetaMask or other wallets. So these people are kind of aware of different risk, and they will be also like they will be having assets in their wallet, so it will be easier for them to participate in lot of protocols.
I kind of have to disagree over there, to be very honest. I mean, the pillar of DeFi is the fact that this is trustless. Uh, DeFi was made to compete against banks. If we completely give up on that side, then that's a massive loss to the DeFi ethos, to be very honest. Uh, while they are TradFi people, we too were once TradFi people, and we got into DeFi and understood exactly what it means. So the other thing is we are looking at DeFi from an approach of them buying tokens. DeFi is not about buying tokens, to be very honest. I think the token part is what has kind of messed up the entire growth of the ecosystem, if I'm being very honest and very crude about it. Uh, and DeFi is more about having ownership of your own assets, having not to take permissions to use the different kind of financial infrastructures that are present, to not be gate kept out of things. That's what DeFi is actually about. And that is something that people need access to. What we're seeing in US today in terms of bank failures, that's exactly why DeFi was made. But DeFi needs to scale for us to actually be able to offer them something. So while we look at DeFi, I don't think the correct approach is to look at it in terms of them buying tokens or just using tokens. It's also in terms of how DeFi kind of improves upon the existing TradFi structure.
Yeah, I fully agree here. Like, I think the whole point of it is that everyone can own their own assets. Problem is, it's so hard right now. So we need solutions, and there are solutions being developed with wallets, wallet management, and things like this, to make it extremely easy for users to own and to create their own wallets. And that's something we're working on as well. But the point I was mentioned earlier about all these different smart contracts and exploits and risks and owners, yes, there of course are so many risks in smart contracts. There's different ways to look at it. I think first of all, like, to make it more user friendly, I think integrations and branding will matter a lot. Like for example, Bridge Mutual. Like, if someone is using a third-party application and they just want to buy insurance, like, it should be extremely easy for apps that do offer crypto to let their users buy insurance. Like, the same way, I think we need to use similar even names or branding to products, for financial products that people are used to use. For example, like savings accounts or investment accounts or insurance, like words that people already know, log in, things like this, like create an account. Even though in the back end it's completely different, it's powered by blockchain. In the front end, maybe we need to use language or nomenclature that's easier for people to understand. And so that's one way to make smart contracts, and also relying on the most reputable and battle-tested protocols. If we focus on these ones and offer these ones first to new users, still mentioning what the risks are, and then branding it in a way that they're not adding liquidity and things like this, but wording it in easy ways, I think that will help people use these protocols. On the flip side of things, yes, there are a lot of risk around using these protocols, but when you look at what people are experiencing in real life, like I'm Lebanese, and so in Lebanon there's a massive issue. Like, there's first of all hyperinflation, which occurred in other countries as well, but people can't even have their assets in their banks. Like, the banks took everything, froze everyone's assets. Like those are the risks that people there live with, and so the risk of using the decentralized protocols that have been living for years now, that haven't been hacked, or that haven't been that are trusted at this point in time, the risk of using those protocols are way less than the risk of using the traditional finance system. So I think countries that obviously have like big problems, they look at the risks very differently. We look at them from other countries, or where the risks are much lower, and so crypto seems so risky, but other places around the world think that crypto is way safer. So yeah, there's different ways to look at it. I think we just need to make it simpler for people to understand what they're doing with their money when they're putting their money in DeFi protocols, and on the other side, start understanding that there are already risks in the traditional finance systems. Like, maybe Lebanon is an extreme scenario, but even in the US or Canada, like for example, Binance that'll be a different topic, but Binance now is not accessible here in Canada. So obviously Canada is a very well-served country in terms of finance, but now Binance, the number one crypto exchange, is no longer going to be operating in Canada. So that's funny, and that's something actually Orion tackles. You can now access Binance with your own wallet without creating an account on Binance, just via Orion. Basically, you plug in, you trade. So that's the kind of financial inclusion that we want to offer to the world, really. And it's funny that it's something that would appeal to Canadian users now, because they can't access Binance, or soon won't be able to access Binance. But we basically need to make DeFi and crypto in general accessible to anyone from their own wallets. So I fully agree with that latest point.
Yeah, I've got to say, like, Brave is like it's got 16 million daily active users, and this is like a big entryway for crypto for a lot of people. We've got a wallet now, but I think like the most important thing is it isn't on onboarding people onto using like lending protocols. It's simply on getting people learning how to manage their own, private keys and their seed phrase, and like, send tokens around and keep hold of their tokens. There's all these complicated things which exist to separate people from their money, but the whole point of it is just to get people to keep hold of their money without anyone being able to take it in a way. Like, I think you've got like most of the DeFi protocols would be more used by like sophisticated sophisticated investors who already understand liquidity and stuff, and otherwise it's our job to educate them. And as someone else was saying, maybe it would be good to point people in the way of protocols where they can't make it as mistakes as easily. So yeah, that would be good.
That leads me on to my next question, and definitely some very good points made by everyone in the audience. On the panel so far, in terms of how we can onboard more people to the industry and how we can grab mainstream's attention, which is definitely something which I think all of us are super keen to do to firstly bridge the gap between for the unbanked and the banked. Firstly, particularly in countries like Lebanon, experiencing hyperinflation at the moment, which is super sad to hear. And I hope everything's good on your end, Stefan, and you're not impacted personally.
Hey, we've
But
got a request, by the way. Maybe before we're moving on to the next question, we can let that person talk.
sure, that was actually the next thing which I was going into. In terms of the audience, if there's anyone who has any questions, now's the time to raise your hand and to ask any questions to the panel. So please go ahead. I'll add you as a speaker. 137. Please feel free to contribute to the discussion or ask any questions that you may have for anyone in the panel.
Yeah, you can talk. Just unmute yourself. We just heard you. Your mic was on. You can unmute and then talk.
It never goes smooth.
Yeah, I noticed. Even in the big ones with like thousands of people listening, it's shit. I think he left. What's the next question, Api?
Yep, we were going to move on to the audience part, but if anyone else is in the audience wants to contribute to the space, any questions, but please make sure that you have understandable level of English and have a working microphone as well, so that we do not have a situation like that. Please feel free to request, and we'll put you up onto the stage. But that definitely leads me into my next question, which is how do you see regulation impacting the growth and adoption of DeFi, and what are some potential approaches to strike a balance between innovation and compliance?
To quote Luke Mulks, if you go down the path of regulation, all you really get is grifts. Like you have to have like freedom to actually build stuff that works, and then the cream will rise to the top. If you tell people not what they can't do, then people will just screw the system as hard as they can, and there won't actually be any innovation.
For sure, for sure. I think that's absolutely a good point. And if anyone in the audience wants to ask any questions, feel free to catch up. Feel free to jump in and raise your hand at any single time and request to speak. But I'd like to hear from the panelists as we start to wrap up towards the end of this Twitter Spaces. Is what are your final thoughts on the potential growth of DeFi, and what excites you about the mass adoption of the future of DeFi, and if there's any particular information that you'd like to reveal about your project, possibly any upcoming information or any alpha that you'd like to share as well, please go ahead.
So the last question was about the regulation impacting the growth of adoption of DeFi, right? I just realized. So I think I think everyone knows that like the U.S. is really one of the main countries and one of the only countries that's making enforceable regulation for both itself and for foreign entities that could be doing business with Americans. Where I think they're trying to head is classifying everything as security that they don't have control over. Like for USDC, right? They very much have control over USDC. They can freeze wallets if they want to of specific holders. And I think it's a huge risk because, like for example, DAI was a really nice decentralized stablecoin. Now most of its treasury is USDC, and really, if they wanted to destroy DAI, they would just freeze the USDC that's in their treasury wallets. And like major blaring problems like that currently exist. A lot of people are just kind of like aloof to it, don't really know that it's there. And I think their end goal is to kind of squeeze on the on ramps and off ramps until it's nearly impossible to get into or out of crypto without doing full KYC. And I think that as far as DeFi goes, like we can decentralize the backends, we can decentralize the protocols themselves, but the front ends are still very much centralized, and that is the point of access for most people because most people don't know how to write to a contract directly. So, and you know the teams still have centralized control over that, so that the most governments are probably going to pretty soon stand up some guidelines and regulations on how you have to have KYC embedded into your front end before you allow any transactions from any wallets to use your front end to do anything with the back end protocol. So that's my biggest concern at the moment, is that's happening pretty quickly, and that's where I think it's definitely going. But still excited for DeFi as a whole. I honestly, I don't think the government's going to win. I don't think regulators are going to win. I think making code is a matter of free speech. I think that a lot of people, like if they do clamp down on DeFi more, it'll also bring a lot of attention to the space, and a lot of people who disagree with their decisions fundamentally may spend their time and effort and energy creating solutions that are trustless and non-custodial and decentralized. It'll be difficult though for people who make a living in this space to get their funds back into like KYC bank accounts to afford to live, to pay for expenses, because if like what they're doing generate income becomes a legal activity, according to whatever government, especially Canada is going like full Nazi right now. It's gonna be rough. It's to make it make sense financially for people that want to be involved in crypto. But I think that people who care about it fundamentally will carry it forward, and it'll exist as a separate economy, or maybe even win. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think there's like two interesting ways to look at it, right? I mean, what we were talking about in terms of scalability. If we can actually get the scalability through, and we call it cryptocurrency, right? If we can actually get the acceptance of something like ETH and BTC being accepted across different retail places and places of purchase, that is where we can kind of get the inclusion of crypto into the system itself. But that is like real world infrastructure that will have to be developed. Uh, I'm not sure if there's enough distribution that we have been able to capture on it for the products that have been developed. But if we do something like that, that is where ramps kind of go out of place, while we can still have decentralized stable like LUSD, right? I mean, LUSD is a key contributor to the space as far as I look at it.
So I wanted to add that currently, uh, I want to look at it in a way that the traditional finance and it took hundreds of years to reach at this stage. DeFi is like very new in comparison, and I believe that DeFi can innovate much faster. We can bring solutions much faster, and that is where I think keys for the future lies into the DeFi space. So rather than I think rather than looking into what exactly is happening around the world, we should focus on how we can bring in innovation. Like who thought that a smart contract on Ethereum can actually be so much powerful that it can replace banks altogether. So we should look into more innovation, what is happening into the blockchain space, and find more solutions and add those products to DeFi. And once we have that strong product stack, once we have the security, adoption will definitely come. Like it will be just a byproduct.
100%. I mean, I really like this point because I feel like we have a lot of tech as a space, and like it's really, and like the next challenge is to, on the one hand, create more cool stuff and improve on what we have, but then also to just like make it accessible, both in terms of like how it looks like and also how people can interact with it. So I'm just personally really excited about L2s. And yeah, I mean, the original question also mentioned like what you could potentially look forward to when it comes to like our protocols. Well, as for Balancer, a lot of L2 deployments are in the works or are going to happen soon. So I'd say this is like really the main thing. So if you haven't checked Balancer out and you love L2s, particularly zk Sync, for instance, go check it out. And yeah, I mean, well, that's coming soon.
Awesome,
and
awesome.
yeah, I mean,
I
generally,
think.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Sorry. Please continue. Please continue. Gleb.
Yeah, I just want to say that like generally I really like seeing us all here because we are supposed to be in a bear market, but realistically, the space is still growing, the space is still moving, especially like elsewhere like Arbitrum, for example. Right? It's really cool to see that we don't really all depend on like the market cycles or whatever, but rather we have that vision and we all together like build different products and protocols that kind of do the same thing, and that is just empowering people and letting them access some very, very awesome stuff. It might be too technical, but hopefully it will be accessible to the whole world very soon.
Amazing, amazing. So as we start to wrap up the end of the space, I think Gleb had already started on this point. But if there's anything exciting that you'd like to share about your own project in terms of what's coming up, and if anyone in the audience has any questions, feel free to request to speak, and you may ask your questions to the panelists here today. But yeah, if as we start to wrap up, if there's anything that anyone would like to share about their own project, any updates or things that are coming soon, or any small bits of alpha that they'd like to share with the community who are either present now or might want to listen to the recording afterwards.
Yeah, at Brave, we've now got a Web3. I don't know if you know, we've got Brave Talk. So it's like Zoom, but without for everyone else listening in on you. But we've now got it so you can token gate the call with NFTs and POAPs. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds awesome. Would be definitely keen to learn more about that and probably experiment with.
And if any of you protocols want to get in touch about running ads or anything, then we can get you in touch. Like we can get you in front of all the people who are getting into crypto via Brave.
Yeah, definitely interested in that. Would love to know more about that, Aaron.
Cool. Thank you, Taryn. I think that's definitely some really cool updates. I think the product which you have, particularly around the Zoom, but more privacy focused, is definitely something that I'm going to take a look at after this space today. But Ayush, moving on to you, is there anything that you'd like to share about recent updates or any alpha that you'd like to share about your protocol?
Yes, so as I told earlier, we are in the final stages of launching our V2 on mainnet. So do check out the space. And there's before that, we have another couple of major announcements. I cannot reveal it, but I mean it will be exciting space for next weeks for Uniland Finance. So please do check out. And our mainnet launch will be awesome. On testnet, we already had like a lot of transactions, a lot of pools live. People who are who want to understand like how permissionless DeFi will look like, how permissionless lending and borrowing would look like, please try out our testnet and see. Like you can experience the whole thing as of now. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. I think it's super cool that you guys are expanding to a ZK solution, in particular polygons, because I've seen some nice and recent growth in their TVL as well. So I think timing is probably on the forefront for your side as well. So that's excellent to hear that you guys are going to be launching on mainnet soon. Gleb, is there anything that you'd like to add from Balance's side of things in terms of what's coming soon or what's coming now or launched recently?
Sure. I mean, Bouncer has a lot of new content coming out. So if you want to check that out and learn more about the Balancer ecosystem, feel free to follow Balancer on Twitter. It's @Balancer. And yeah, I mean, I just really feel like a lot of contributors are like excited about what's next in terms of like educating people, onboarding people, and putting out a lot of great content. So yeah, Balancer is going to be active both on chain and on socials. So yeah, keep an eye on that.
Awesome, awesome, great stuff. Balance has been at the forefront of the industry for super long time. Really enjoy using your protocol for a variety of different things, and glad to see that more things are coming very soon as well. Mogulsect, anything that you'd like to add to the conversation about what's coming soon?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, love Balancer too, especially with the BVG USD pool, which is kind of not removing the fragmentation of liquidity in DeFi. Absolute fan of that. On what Skybox is doing, we just launched a V2.1, which is a security update and ensures that the security is streamlined and makes our product even more robust. In terms of what we're going to be developing now, we recently came out with native MIM curve and convex leverage that enables you to get as high as 40% APYs on Curve itself with just 5x leverage. After this, we'll be coming out with more Curve V2 pools, spot leverage trading on Gearbox itself, which will be one of the first spot leverage trading protocols in DeFi. And then, of course, the V3 that we have announced earlier, which will be bringing a lot of new stuff. So make sure you check out our socials.
Awesome, awesome. Great to hear some of those updates. And V3 is definitely a very big stride forward for the entire industry. So congratulations on that to yourself and the rest of the Gearbox team. Last but
Thank you.
not least, before we go over to Mike, Stefan, anything that you'd like to add? I know you touched on quite a few things already, but anything that you'd like to add for the audience here today?
Just on the Orion side of things, like we keep building. We've been building in the back end a lot of exciting stuff. Nothing to announce today, but some of our community members have been looking at our GitHub and figuring out a bit what we've been working on. So solutions that unique solutions in the space that don't exist yet in terms of decentralized trading. So we currently offer decentralized access to Binance spot trading and KuCoin spot trading across different networks. We're working towards expanding that. So if anyone wants to follow what we're doing, we can share our socials. We also have a community that looks at our GitHub and figures out a bit what we're building in the backend. But we like to build and then release once we're ready and talk about it after it's released. So yeah, thanks again. Thanks by the way for hosting this. This was great.
That's awesome. I've got to check out this your Binance services. I want to see how it's done. Thank you all to the panelists who showed up. It was a really fun conversation. Glad you also keep coming on with us. That's great. Thank you so much for being so active with us. And thank you to the Balancer team specifically. As for Bridge Mutual, I mean, everyone is aware of the state of the market right now. Bridge Mutual is fine. We've been working since August of last year on a complete and total protocol overhaul. Everything from a rebranding to a redesign of the tokenomics to widening the scope and doing a completely new user interface. But where we find ourselves right now is that, I mean, I'm basically announcing an announcement because we don't think it's a good time to release big chunks of work and new product into a market that is not so focused. and is more concerned about like macro environmental stuff. So we have a lot to show and a lot to share. We're super excited for it, and we know we'll keep our community up to date. I assume the people listening to stuff like this during bear markets are really like the hardcore, DeFi enthusiasts and the fans and stuff. So I don't mind sharing it here. I doubt it'll like spoil the surprise when we launch it later. But it's been a lot of work and a long time coming, and we'll keep you up to date when we're going to launch that. It's currently raising capital at the moment to stick out the rest of the bear market. But thank you all to the people here for listening, and to the people who are in our community. Thank you for always showing up and being supportive.
Amazing. It's been a super fun space. Our first roundtable discussion so far. Would be keen to see how the community responds to it, and accordingly we might host some in the future, and would love to, if we do, would love to have some of the panelists come back again as future guests discussing different topics. Olive, I know that Shailesh is not here, but if there's anything that you'd like to add to the discussion about what's coming next for your project, please raise your hand and feel free to speak. If not, Shailesh had to leave and do some other things, no worries, and we can look to close off the space very soon. Okay, I will take that as a note. Thank you everyone so much for joining the space. It was definitely great fun to learn from all of your different perspectives, from being leaders in the space and in a variety of different sub-niches within DeFi. And thank you everyone in the audience who took time out of the day to listen, and everyone listening to the recap afterwards. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much.
Stay
Thanks
gravy,
for
baby.
hosting, guys. Bye bye.